All right, welcome into the GasHouse gang, guys. Kevin Wheeler, Bernie Miklasz with you here on a Thursday. Bernie, we got some stuff to get into today, and we actually have some mildly new reporting. I know we're all kind of getting sick of the Arenado watch. I know I am. I'm suspecting that you are. I think everybody in St. Louis is probably getting tired of the, what's the news today? Is it going to change today? Is Boston going to sign Bregman? What's going on? But we did get a little stuff today from Jon Morosi, so we'll talk about that in a minute.
Sure.
Your video today, by the way, touches on this. I want to give everybody a sneak preview of that so that they can go check out the Bernie Show on YouTube and get the full breakdown. So we got those things. I think we can talk some catching today. We can talk some big picture. I really loved your video yesterday about kind of looking at Jocketty and Mo and pitching acquisitions and things like that. I thought that was a really interesting thing. We can hit on that. We can do some college football playoff. We can do some blues. So we got time, hopefully, for most of it. We'll just have to wait and see. But we're going to start with the Nolan Arenado stuff.
Here's the blues segment. Win some home games.
Yeah,
you got a lot of them coming up. No, we'll get back to that. Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a good tease. That's exactly what we're going to talk about. All right, so let's talk about this. Jon Morosi today mentioned on MLB Network that he thinks Seattle and Detroit could be teams added to the mix on Arenado. I have my doubts about both from their perspectives, not from Arenado's, but also from Nolan's, right? I mean, those two places aren't exactly guaranteed to be competitive or more competitive now and in the future, although, you know, Detroit did come off that crazy run last year, but they were pretty mediocre for 4 months. They sold at the deadline last year, but they're a young team. They're an up-and-coming team. But also, I'm not sure he fits those places. So given this news today, given how this has gone, and again, you just talked about today on the Bernie Show on YouTube about just kind of this being the anchor weighing down the Cardinals offseason. What do you make of it all today?
Yeah, you know, that's the thing. The Cardinals offseason is just so strange. It's the strangest that I've observed all my years, 35 plus years, chronicling this team in different media platforms. And it's strange that because like other than the Cardinals not picking up the options on Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn, nothing has happened. Nothing in terms of the major league roster has happened. And I know that things can still happen, but, you know, they're 35 days away from reporting day at Jupiter. They're 45 days away from the first spring training game. And
wow,
it's like, is anything going to happen? Anything, even other than Arenado. And I know that there's a lot of free agents that haven't signed. And so there's a bit of a log jam. And once the guys start to settle with new teams, the Cardinals will probably swing in action. But this has been a very odd and very boring and certainly quiet offseason for the Cardinals. And so the only noise that we all of us big mouths have to work with is the ongoing Arenado saga. And the thing of it is a legitimate story because this was Jon Mozeliak's top offseason priority, to move him, to cut payroll, and also to open space for Nolan Gorman at third, which would also give them a chance to play Donovan at second base and Sajacy at second base. So there is a trickle-down effect to all this. So it is legitimate news, but I agree with you, my friend. There are days where, even though I talk about it a lot, there are days I get really burned out on it.
Yeah, I do too, because there's only so many ways. And again, as we've talked about, part of it is this particular thing, as you put it, their number one offseason priority. It affects everything. It affects whether or not you're going to have to move starting pitchers. It affects whether or not you might move Helsley. It affects how your lineup's going to go. I mean, this is, Keegan threw this out there even right before the show today. What happens if they don't save all of the money that they hope to save in this kind of a deal? I mean, it really does impact everything. It might even impact, Bernie, whether or not they commit to, say, a multi-year deal on a guy like Brendan Donovan rather than just going through arbitration, right? If they're worried about getting stuck with money, and I don't want to put it that way. I shouldn't put it that way. But, like, it impacts just about every kind of decision, right?
Right. And the whole thing about how much money the Cardinals would be willing to digest in this deal. And according to Katie Wu and others, they've been very reluctant to, offer a lot of salary relief to a team that would trade Arenado. They've been pretty tight with that. And I mentioned this the other day, but even if the Cardinals chipped in 20%, they would still wind up bottom line saving $43 million over the course of his contract.
Right.
Even if they took the thing up to 25-30%, they still would save a lot of money over the next 3 years on that contract. It may not be what they want to do, but if it really is a priority, it would be best for everybody to move him. You can't really have your cake and eat it too, because his offensive profile really stinks. Teams have a lot of questions about that. He has a no trade clause. He has every right to use it, but it just makes it more complicated. I find it hard to believe in a way that the Cardinals think they could actually not pay a huge amount of the freight for Arenado getting transferred to another ball club.
I'm with you, and I think it'll look. It could also just be negotiating, right?
Sure.
They may be playing hardball until they're down to nuts and bolts, and
Right.
if it comes down to it, and it's all right, Boston's interested. They lost out Bregman, and here's our final offer: take it or leave it. Who knows? They might take it. So that's hard for us to know because
I agree,
but we do know that they've been historically speaking, they've been stubborn on money issues. From not releasing players under contract when they're not performing to, this kind of thing. And I don't blame them, by the way. It's their business. And if they can find the negotiating point, like I never thought they would get Nolan Arenado from Colorado to begin with and get money to do it, but they did. Right. So maybe they know more than we do.
Well, yeah, and the thing of it is, I always look at it pragmatically. All right, they got a really, really good year from Arenado in 2021. They got his career best year in 2022. And some people might look at some of his numbers from the Coors Field Day and say, well, wait a minute, he had a higher slugging percentage. That's because of the ballpark. When you take OPS plus or WRC plus, it neutralizes the statistic. It takes the ballpark effects out of it. So that was Arenado's best season in 2022. Okay, the Cardinals had to go through one offensively, by his standards, poor season or mediocre season. But they've really gotten the best that they could out of Arenado, given his aging curve. So why not cut your losses now, even if you don't have the appetite to eat so much of that contract? I mean, and this is something that I haven't pointed out yet in my video or elsewhere, and I should have. It's like, if he stays and you're going to continue to pay him full price, it works out poorly for you, not only because you can't clear space for Gorman, and also by connection, clear playing time for other people, but you're also going to be stuck with an investment in a guy who's only getting worse and worse and worse offensively. So how does that help you exactly? Yeah. And especially if he's unhappy or he's not all in, emotionally, psychologically, whatever. I mean, why do that? I mean, it just makes sense to eat the money and just make the clean break.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But it is negotiation. I totally agree.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so this is the GasHouse gang. Bernie Miklasz, Kevin Wheeler with you here on a Thursday. Bernie and Matt will be in tomorrow, and obviously we love having you guys. I want to remind everybody, do a little business part here, Bernie. We want people to subscribe on the YouTube channel. We got tons. I just saw our behind the scenes numbers yesterday. We're doing great, getting tons of podcast downloads. We're getting tons of views every day. So the only thing we really want now is to get people to subscribe on the YouTube channel. So do that at KMOX Sports on YouTube. And by the way, do that for the Bernie Show on YouTube as well. Just subscribe. It makes it easier for you. Everything gets sent to your feed.
We know, Kevin, I'm really glad you mentioned that. There's a specific reason, not just because you mentioned my video, but I will admit up front, I'm so scatterbrained and I do so many different things. I have done a poor job of promoting our GasHouse gang video, not intentionally, not because I don't care. In fact, I care passionately because I love this and I think it's great that KMOX is doing this, and I love working with you guys. But I think what I'm going to do from now on, starting maybe the next video I do later this afternoon on the college football semifinals, is to just mention you can watch us. You can watch myself, me working with Kevin Wheeler, Tom Ackerman, Matt Pauly, and everybody working with each other, depending on what day it is, on the GasHouse gang. So I will include that promo in my own video because I'm proud to be doing both of these things.
All right. Speaking of business, talk to us about Saliga. They're sitting there. The little truck is right there below me, and they're one of our first sponsors here on the GasHouse Gang, and we love them.
Absolutely. And every time I see that truck, it actually makes me smile. You know why? Because I don't care where you live or how old your house is, or these inevitable problems that happen, with heating and cooling and some other things. All I know is this: whenever we call Saliga Heating and Cooling and we see that yellow truck rolling up in front of our house, it gives me peace of mind because I know they're going to take care of it and they're going to take care of the problem and they're going to be honest and they're going to be upfront and they're going to try to save us money and they're not going to try to hustle us into buying something we don't need. Their integrity is 100%. And we've been dealing with them for 15, 16 years, so we would know. Anyway, this proud independent American standard heating and air conditioning dealer can do it all for you. I want you to, maybe give some thought. Please give some thought to becoming a member of the Priority Club. I can't talk today. The Priority Club maintenance program. You will save money. You will get peace of mind, and you'll also have. You'll be able to extend your equipment, which means you'll save even more money that way. It's a great plan. It's well worth every nickel and dime that you put into it. There's also financing options available subject to credit approval. So if you want to see everything that this great American standard heating and air conditioning dealer can do for you, you just go to SaligaHeatingandCooling.com. That's SaligaHeatingandCooling.com, and you'll find the phone number there. Saliga Heating and Cooling is outstanding.
All right, so really happy to have them on board as a sponsor. And anybody else out there, you want to join in? We got you, man. We got you. That's also part of the reason why we're doing the business on the subscribers, because business outside of that too. I'm in business mode today.
You and I will like tap dance or whatever, right? We can have private entertainment. Maybe we'll do a GasHouse Gang from somebody's business. Who knows?
Hey, that would be phenomenal,
right?
I would love to do that. We get out on remote, get a couple hundred people out there. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
We'll definitely be working on that. And by the way, working on merch too. This is great. Ken tossed this out there, Bernie. So let's continue on, because I had mentioned to you before the show that I wanted to get in on this topic. You did a video yesterday talking about Walt Jocketty and talking about team construction and stuff. So I guess give us the Cliff's Notes version of it, and then we can jump off of this. But I think Ken makes a good point. Walt deserves a lot of recognition, obviously, and certainly it's been a good time since he left, but it was a good time before he left too.
Listen, and let me say this up front. I understand that free agent pitcher contracts weren't as astronomical as they are now. So, from that standpoint, Walt Jocketty had an easier time than, say, John Mozeliak in terms of going out and buying pitching. I mean, top of the line pitching. But Walt Jocketty also knew, and I neglected to mention this in the video, but he also knew he had Dave Duncan as the pitching coach, maybe the greatest of all time.
Right.
And so he knew that if he could just, no matter how he did it, you draft a guy, you partially develop a guy like Wainwright, who started out with Atlanta in their minor league system, or you make trades, or you make some gambles on free agency. Dave Duncan will help find a way to make them better. But Walt Jocketty did a great job. If you look at his legacy, and this includes even some stuff that happened after he left with pitchers who were still there, like Adam Wainwright, right? And Chris Carpenter, who was a Jocketty guy. And Carpenter, we all know what he did after Walt was fired, right? They had 9 top 3 finishes, Cardinals starting pitchers, under Walt Jocketty. Not 9 top 3 Cy Young finishes, and 742 Cy Young voting points. And Chris Carpenter in 2005 won the team's first Cy Young since Bob Gibson in 1970. Carpenter had a second place finish, a third place finish. Adam Wainwright, bunch of second place, third place finishes. Darryl Kyle had a third place finish. Matt Morris had a third place finish. One way or the other, Walt Jocketty brought all of these guys to the organization. And as the Jocketty guys have left the scene, Carpenter, now Wainwright, there's been diminishing returns. None of the guys that Mo has brought in, one way or the other, there have been no top 3 finishes. The best finish was Jack Flaherty, 4th in 2019, and Miles Miklasz, who was very good. He finished 5th in the NL voting in 2018. And while Jocketty's pitcher, so to speak, had 742 Cy Young voting points, Under Mozeliak, the Cardinals have had 89 Cy Young voting points. So this, to me, this explains a lot of why the Cardinals have gone through a downturn. They have not been able to draft and develop starting pitching at a high level that's sustainable. They haven't been able to get pitchers in here at their preferred price point in free agency. And there's a reason why the Cardinals, there's a lot of reasons, but there's a reason why the Cardinals from 2000 through 2015 had won more postseason games and more regular season games than any team in the National League, and second to the Yankees in one of those categories, not to mention all the times they made the playoffs. Pitching is always going to be your foundation. It's always going to be your foundation. You know why? Because even if your offense is not good, and the Cardinals in this era, this recent years, have not had a good offense. They've been ranked 10th or worse in the National League in runs scored 5 of the last 6 seasons. But excellent pitching is a neutralizer. It gives you a chance to win some of those games that you've been losing because you can't outscore the opposition. Their run prevention has got to be stout. It really does.
Totally agree. And, like for a while there, they were doing a good job of developing their own guys, right? For a long while. I mean, we had that run where it's Lance Lynn and Carlos Martinez and Michael Wacha and Jack Flaherty. Like there was a good run there where you were supplying that. Well, that stopped because the last guy that really fit those descriptions was Flaherty. And that's been 6 years. I mean, he's in free agency. So that's the gap that there's been in developing. And, I think part of the thing that's interesting, Bernie, is when you go back to that time you're referring to, the Jocketty time, Tony and Dunk.
Also, Jeff Luhnow.
Sure.
Coming in to, kind of revitalize their player development system.
Yeah. But just purely from my end, talking about the guys you bring in at the major league level, Dave Duncan was a guy that was out in front of curves. And since then, you are not ahead of the curve anymore.
Right.
You're still doing a lot of those same things, right? You're not playing high spin rate fastballs at the top of the zone and curveballs that come out of the same tunnel and things along those lines. So where in that time, you were the top of the food chain when it came to making changes, making adjustment. Here's what works in baseball in the year 2004 or 2006 or whatever. And in 2022, 2023, 2024, you were not at the forefront of that, which is all about what, changes are going on behind the scenes with Chaim Bloom. But to me, that's the really interesting difference is those same guys that the Cardinals have signed in these recent years. If you were ahead of the curve and doing some of those more advanced things, you might have gotten more out of it.
Right. There's no doubt. And there's a couple things to add here. I will give John Mozeliak his regime. I know that I think it really is against like city, St. Louis city ordinances, right? Maybe it might even be federal and state regulations. If you're a media person in St. Louis, you are not allowed. You are strictly prohibited from ever praising John Mozeliak. So I realize that. I after this video goes up, from what I'm about to say, I do expect at least one law enforcement person to come to my house to investigate. So anyway, but to his credit, one area where the Cardinals have been really strong when pitching, a lot of great relievers, and a lot of those relievers showed up long after Walt Jocketty cleared out.
Yeah. Look at the line of closers that have come through.
Helsley, Trevor Rosenthal, who was phenomenal. Jason Mott. And then you had, Kevin Segrist and Carlos Martinez and Seth Maness and on and on and on.
Yeah, Matt Bowman for a while.
Even Mo traded for Edwin Mujica, and when he did, who became an all-star closer, and everybody's like, well, why didn't he go get Jonathan Broxton? The Reds did. I never heard of this guy.
Yeah, he was a great pickup.
And Mujica turned into a great pickup. He really did. And Ryan Franklin, who, by the way, he signed with when Jocketty was a GM.
Yep.
But Mozeliak was the point man on that. He emphatically recommended that the Cardinals sign him, and they did. So he's done some good things with the bullpen. That should be pointed out. Officer, I'm sorry, officer. Here, I'll put my hands behind my back. Come on in. Can you wait a minute? Hold on. Officer, can you let me finish doing the video? It'll only be about another 20 minutes or so, and then you can detain me and take me down to headquarters. Anyway, go ahead.
I mean, the things that we're talking about now are valid criticisms of the front office, but to act like the last 25 years haven't been one of the greatest eras in Cardinals history is silliness.
The whole DeWitt era, 29 seasons,
Yeah,
outstanding.
we have to do both, right? We have to criticize what's bad and what needs fixing, but we also have to remember how long it was good.
Right.
And that's partly why 83 wins seems like such a failure, because the era that preceded it made that feel like a failure as opposed to just a mediocre season.
Well, you're right. And the one thing, and listen, I've actually spoken with Bill DeWitt Jr. about this. In fact, when he hired Lunau, a lot of people didn't understand it. And I didn't quite understand it at the time. And I remember having about a 2-3 hour sit down with Bill DeWitt, and we walked through it. And he explained the model they needed to put in place and why it made sense. And after I heard that, I said, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Homegrown talent, as long as you keep it coming and coming and coming and coming, it gives you a foundation, and you save money because they're all cost-controlled players for 6 seasons. And if this makes sense, and it does, and by saving money with all these homegrown players, that gives you the freedom to spend money because you've saved so much because you have a lot of homegrown guys. And that's when you go top off your team. You go make a trade. You go make an upper scale free agent signing. You can add payroll simply because you're developing so many of your own players. It gives you payroll space to make bigger moves from the outside. The thing I don't understand, and I really mean this, and I do respect Bill DeWitt, and I've been saying it, I will continue to say it. It has nothing to do with me working for KMOX. Go back and read me at scoopsnetwork.com and some other things. The one unfortunate thing is DeWitt's era in St. Louis in baseball has been largely terrific, phenomenal. But here's what I don't understand. That model, that his philosophy about how they had to put rosters together and the importance of the minor leagues and developing your own, he was a huge believer in that. And it worked, and it worked, and it worked. I still, to this day, do not understand why they let that crumble. And I'm talking about, it isn't just Mo, it's also Bill DeWitt.
Right.
I don't understand that. And I look forward to having a conversation with Bill sometime, maybe, hopefully in the near future, to talk about that, because something that you believe in, that's your baby, player development, and something that was phenomenally successful. How do you let that slide? And I'm glad that he finally said, oh, we got to do something, but it could have been prevented earlier, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. It's the GasHouse Gang with Bernie Miklasz and Kevin Wheeler, obviously on all of the KMOX social media channels, YouTube, and that's where you're watching us now. If you're listening on the air, well, obviously you're on KMOX. And if you're doing the podcast, we are available where podcasts are, everywhere podcasts are. So you can join us all day, every day, anytime you want, or live between noon and about 12:45, and we got you covered. So, Bernie, I had written down earlier, so I don't know if Jackson is on our text string or not, but I had put in last night that I think we would be fun to talk about the catching tandem a little bit. And Jackson actually commented on that a little bit ago on our comment feed. And by the way, keep bringing in comments. When we can get them in, we're gonna throw them in there. Sometimes we'll be talking over them and they'll make a separate point. Sometimes we'll just talk specifically about them. But Jackson, you might have read our minds that I wanted to get into this a little bit today. And I just wanted to make it simple, Bernie.
Sure.
I don't think today they have to pick one or the other. But what I want to see over time is opportunity for the better bat to get playing time on a regular basis. But also, most importantly, and this is my theme for 2025, my theme for 2025 for every position, every lineup spot, everything is be adaptable. So if you're in a period of time where your team is not scoring runs, well, then Herrera should be catching. And if you're in a period of time where the top 6 or 7 guys are crushing it and you're rolling and you're scoring runs, well, then, yeah, okay, play the defense. But I think what I want to see is just this position in particular, until or unless one of them runs with it completely. I want to see what makes sense based on the circumstances. Who are you facing that day? How's your lineup been going? How's the defense been going? Like all of it, it does not have to be a predetermined thing. It can be based on the circumstances of that day.
Well, see, Kevin, as you know, because we've talked about this a little bit between ourselves, not only on GasHouse Gang, but just when I've been down in the studio with you. This one to me is vexing, maybe would be the word, because let me just throw a couple numbers at you. As I said, 5 of the last 6 seasons, the Cardinals they've ranked 10th or worse in runs scored in the National League. Okay. They clearly need to spruce up their offense.
Yes.
Here's what Ivan Herrera has done over the last 2 seasons as a catcher for the Cardinals. He has batted .301. He draws a ton of walks. He's got a .377 on base. He has slugged over 400, and he has an OPS of 795. Last year's OPS was 800. In terms of OPS plus, he was the team's second best hitter to Wilson Contreras.
Yep.
And I mention this because it isn't just that he hits for average. His walk rate is tremendous. Now, Pedro Pages is a better overall defensive catcher, although he doesn't throw out runners at a much better rate than Herrera. I like Pages, and he had his moments offensively, but the dude had a .281 on base percentage. He doesn't draw walks. He doesn't really hit for average, and his slugging percentage was under 400. Last season, his OPS plus was 18% below average, whereas Herrera is more like 15% above average. How could you not pump that offensive resource that you have in Herrera?
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, if this was a year, this is a year for development and things like that, this give him a full opportunity to work on his defensive flaws that he needs to correct. But they get so hung up on guys. And I think a lot of that has to do with the manager who maybe, if pitchers would go to Tony La Russa, and I know that's Tony La Russa, they go to Dave Duncan and complain about this or that, that most of them would be told, like, okay, noted, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think Ali Marmol, when he hears these pitchers, and a lot of them, frankly, have their own motivations, right? Miklasz, they have their own motivations because they want to look good and they want to find someone else to blame it on. Miklasz. Anyway, Jack Flaherty. It's a situation. It's just like, I'm sorry, but just because you're a manager and a pitcher or two comes to you and say, well, we'd rather have Pages catching. Okay. Thanks for your opinion. We'll see how it goes. You don't immediately roll over.
No,
right?
But they did on Contreras. They did it when they did their big free agent signing. So we know that this is a problem.
Right.
And by the way, I should point out, this is important to me as a catching guy. The problems that
all I know is when Jim Palmer was making his comeback, it was an important comeback.
It was me. You
were his catcher down in Miami.
Twice in a bullpen.
I love that. I asked Palmer one time because we become kind of friendly after his retirement. I said, hey, do you remember this guy? I won't say how I described you.
Short, red-headed guy.
I said, you remember this guy?
Little leprechaun.
Yeah, the kid was a catcher for Miami, and he caught your bullpens. He says, yeah, I think I remember him. He was a nice kid. I said, well, yeah, you may have gotten that part wrong, but whatever. No,
well, maybe at 18 I was nice. At
you were a nice kid. Well, you still are. You're a very nice guy. I got to bust you a little bit.
It's good. It's good. I don't see anything with those guys that's not fixable is kind of my point. And I think we should also point out that last year's pitching staff probably had something to do with the team not throwing runners out. Because even Wilson Contreras, who was so Wilson Contreras is typically an elite thrower. He's an elite thrower. Well, he was still good last year. I think he ranked in the 68th percentile, but the year before he was in the 85th percentile, and the year before that he was in the 92nd percentile. So are we to believe that all three of these guys are unable to throw runners out, or are we to believe that maybe they have their flaws, but the pitching staff still needs to do a better job of helping them out? Because I think it's a little bit of both. And let's be honest, it's also rules changes. Right. The rules changes have come into these last couple of years and made it a little harder. So that could play into Contreras too. And I think that's why I wanted to get to that with this comment. I don't think it's that bad. I think it can get better if we're going to judge a guy like as an example, if we were going to judge Yadier Molina's offense by what it looked like in his first year or two in the big leagues, we would have been wrong, dead wrong. You do have to give guys a chance to work on things and improve at the major league level before we make that kind of decision. So, I think the argument is really easy, and it's not one or the other yet, although it will be that at some point, but you got to let it play and not predetermine which characteristics you want. not say, well, the pitchers love Pages, so he's going to be the guy. That can't be it, because you got to balance offense, you got to balance defense, you got to balance what your team needs on a given day going through the course of a season. And what you need today might be different than what you need tomorrow.
There's no doubt about it. And the thing about it is, like, we just got a message from one of our viewers, and thank you, who basically said the problem with Herrera is, someone on first base gets to first base, it's a double. Basically saying that's how futile the situation is when he's behind the plate. So let me fact check that, because I don't think the difference between Pages and Herrera is all that much, but
it was not.
So I got it right in front of me. So Pages threw out 19% of base runners. Now that was twice as good as Herrera, but the point is 19% is lousy. So let's not turn Pages into Johnny Bench. Okay. That's all I'm trying to say. And the other thing is, when do we as media people and fans urge and put pressure on the Cardinals to actually take young players and make them better? Or do you just give up on them? I mean, to me, Herrera's defensive flaws represents everything that has gone wrong with their player development system, but also what happens when they get to the majors. Who is there to help them get better? It's frustrating, man. Yeah. But it's always so easy for fans to blame the player, Yeah.
And
players are responsible ultimately. I get it.
And I do think that, again, there's work to be done, but every day, this is why I'm talking about this for center field too, right? We've been talking about this. Defense matters, but it doesn't always trump offense. Sometimes you're going to be a better team with the better bat, and that's important. Now, if Herrera and Pages were the same hitter, well, yeah, okay, play Pages, right?
Not even close.
They're right. They're not close. One guy is a lot better hitter than the other, and that's part of the balance. Is you got to go by what your team needs. So yeah, if you got a bunch of guys hitting, and you're scoring a lot of runs in a stretch, and you want to play a little defense for that time, okay, fine, whatever. But when you're not scoring runs, then your better bat's got to be in there, because if you don't score runs, it doesn't matter how many you prevent.
To your point, and this is something that I've been talking about, and I want to call up something here really quick, and it won't take long, honestly. You look at you look at Lars Nootbaar. If the Cardinals have to put Nolan Gorman back at second baseman if they keep Arenado, Brendan Donovan's got to play a lot in left field. He can play at other places, but I would think he played really good in left field when he's been used there. I would think if you want to maximize your lineup, you move Nootbaar to center field. Is Nootbaar as good as Michael Ciani in center field? No, defensively, of course not.
No.
But he's been like one defensive run saved below average during his career when he's played center.
Right.
I mean, it's just not that big of a deal.
Right.
And his outs above average as a center fielder are actually
it's okay.
Above average slightly.
Yeah.
So,
right.
and by the way, the thing about Ciani, I know that they are madly in love with him down there, right? He's an impressive center fielder. He does save runs. But you've pointed this out a bunch of times. I mean, how many times, how many catches does a center fielder make in a game? I don't want to minimize it because a bad center fielder can cost you.
For sure.
But the point is, if you are trying to have both things, a better offense, but good defense there too, who better than Ciani to be your fourth outfielder where you can put him anywhere in the outfield to protect leads late in games?
When you have a lead, yeah.
Right. You got to get a lead. You got to score some runs.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. I did want to address this really fast. This will take 10 seconds. They do have a new catching coach in the organization. He's a young guy, a recently retired player. He's got a great reputation. I followed him on Twitter. He seems like a really sharp dude, so hopefully that will have an impact. But that's something they have not had, and they now do have that, so it's a good thing. One of High Bloom's recent hires.
Can you imagine that, not having a catching instructor?
No, as a catching guy, no. I've been available the whole time.
And they've had all these good young catchers on the way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And the problem is they got away with Yachty essentially being that in spring training. I'm not kidding, because he works with those guys in spring training. And, once he went away, that kind of went away as well, which is unfortunate. All right, GasHouse gang with Bernie Miklasz.
Well, Clint just said, I get all that about Newt, but he hasn't been proven to stay healthy. Well, I didn't think I needed to say that. We know that already.
It's an obvious thing. If he's hurt, then you don't have the choice.
But what do you do? I mean, you're if he's healthy, you're going to play him in the outfield. Center field a little more difficult, but Newt has had more like fluke injuries than soft tissue injuries. And listen, if he is a guy that you think can be a big part of your club, you can't be afraid to play him in center field.
No, hopefully they won't.
But you know, the thing of it is, like, that's the only test that he has to pass. I'm well aware of that.
Yeah.
But that's not a reason to he might get hurt in center field. You know what? That's no reason to be frightened of something. Play your best guys, period.
Amen. Good call. It's the GasHouse Gang with Bernie Miklasz and Kevin Wheeler. We got a few minutes left, Bern, before we finish up. I know I thought we were going to get to some football and hockey, but we're not going to. We'll finish with baseball in a second.
Blues have 13 of their next 17 home games.
Oh, this is it.
17. This is it. The big push begins. Generate some momentum going forward. All right, go ahead.
Time. All right, so what I want to do, though, is we got to talk about Saga Heating and Cooling one more time before we run out of time.
Saga Heating and Cooling has been around since 1927. You know, Dan Saga is the fourth generation owner-operator of this great, proud family business, which is an independent American standard heating and air conditioning dealer. And the thing about it, I love this because I come from a business that owned a family for decades, and all the kids would work in it and things like that. Some of the best days of my life. So I love family businesses. And the Saga family continuously has been taking care of St. Louis family since 1927. I just love that. You talk about a track record, and I can vouch, being a Saga family here for the last 16 years, I can vouch for their credibility, their honesty, their knowledge, their professionalism, their classiness when they're in your home. They get things done, and they're never going to try to hustle you or upsell you. They'll look to actually save you money if there's a cheaper solution for your problem. So I would recommend you call them. If you don't know who to call, go by their track record. They're nearly 100 years in business, the same family. Do you think that you have to be like great to still be going strong 100 years later? They have a priority club. Please consider becoming a member. You go to SagaHeatingandCooling.com, find out more. Also, financing options are available subject to credit approval. And the phone number is at SagaHeatingandCooling.com.
All right, we only got a couple minutes left, Bernie, and my phone, I don't know if you guys noticed me turn and look at my phone a few minutes ago. It buzzed a little bit ago about what Josh messaged us. So the Cardinals have settled with Ryan Helsley.
Yeah.
He will not have to go to arbitration. Makes total sense.
That's good.
$8.2 million. I don't think this impacts anything one way or the other.
It doesn't.
Trade or not. But good.
Well, they want to keep him.
Right.
But we all us in the media have actually estimated that his arbitration salary would come in about $8 million.
Yeah.
So this is what we expected.
And it's kind of the middle ground between what each side filed at. Yeah.
Right. So they seem determined to keep him. So we'll see if there's anything that can change their mind.
Yeah. So I'm okay. In this case, I'm okay with only moving him for the Godfather offer. You know what I'm saying? I'm okay with that because you do have that opportunity later on to do it. And, you know, I know there's the risk factor. I brought it up, when we talked about this a while ago, like, yeah, he could get hurt and that would be unfortunate. But, you know, the way that they've used him now as a pure closer rather than as the multi-inning guy or maybe the seventh inning against a tough, part of the lineup, I think it's going to be much more likely to keep him healthy and out there.
Do we have time for you to answer a question I have for you?
We have 1 minute.
All right. This is for you. What is your philosophy in giving long-term contracts to good relievers who throw 99 miles an hour?
I'm all for it. Now,
you are
depending on what you mean by long term.
What about the risk factor? If you sign a guy for 4 years, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, if I would do 4 years, I wouldn't do 5 or 6. 3 or 4 is really good. It would be for a high end closer for an all-star. I'd do it.
Good.
Unless they're 35 years old, but he's not. What's Helsley? 29 now.
30.
So yeah. I'd say 4 would be the long end, but 3 would be ideal. And I would pay him $12-13 million a year, $14 million a year.
And that's one thing I'm very happy to give Ali Marmol praise for in the pitching coach, Dusty Blake. They came up with a plan to definitely reduce the risk factor of injuries with Helsley. And they absolutely stuck to it all year. And this guy had the best season in the history of the Cardinals as a closer. And the manager and the pitching coach had something to do with that.
Yep. All right. We got to wrap it up for today. One more reminder, go to YouTube. If you're on YouTube now, just click subscribe while you're watching the GasHouse Gang, and do that. By the way, do that for the Bernie show as well on YouTube. So subscribe to those. It really helps. It gives a lot of people just data that they need to tell us how many people are there on the regular. We know what the downloads are. They've been great on the podcast. We're getting a lot of views in real time on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. So we're very happy with it. But the more subscribers, the better. And that might help us get the merch out too. We got some cool t-shirts and maybe some hats. So just a reminder on that. Bernie, have a great day, buddy. And looking forward to hearing you and Matt Pauley here tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Thanks, pal. Enjoy the college football the next couple days.
This has been the GasHouse Gang on all of your KMOX social media channels and on KMOX 1120.